My parents gave the house I bought for them to my sister, so I stopped paying the mortgage, and the house was auctioned off by the bank. I'm a 28-year-old man, and I've been paying the mortgage on a house I bought for my parents, only to find out they gave it to my 25-year-old sister. Worse, they didn't even bother telling me. I've always known my parents love my sister more than me, but I never thought it would go this far. My parents have this toxic and deep love for her, but sadly, they have nothing for me. As the oldest of two siblings, they always had higher expectations for me, and I was instilled with a sense of responsibility from a young age. My younger sister, Perry, was treated like a princess. Not exactly like a princess since my parents didn't have much money, but she always got what she wanted. My parents had no academic expectations for her. She could explore her passions and hobbies while I was buried in my studies. It was always like that. My parents weren't subtle about their expectations for me. They made it clear I needed to build a solid career and couldn't fail at my studies. After I graduated high school, my parents took out loans and spent their savings to pay for my technical school. I suggested that instead of draining their savings, they take out a loan for my education, and I'd pay it back after getting a job. My parents opposed the loan because of the high interest. They said I'd end up paying 1.5 times the principal. I was too young to understand the complexities of a loan. I thought if my parents said it, it must be right. I was only 18 at the time. Little did I know they were saving me from the burden of a loan just to take advantage of me later. Not long after finishing college, I got a good job in tech. Exactly what they wanted for me. They were definitely proud, but I always felt like some sort of commodity, like they had invested in me expecting something in return. They never missed a chance to say, "We've sacrificed so much for you. Don't forget where you came from." At first, it seemed harmless. I thought they just wanted to keep me humble, but over time, I realized it was emotional manipulation. Emotional blackmail was their specialty. As I started working, the pressure mounted. Every time I visited, my dad would hint at how I shouldn't forget he spent his savings to pay for my education and how I needed to work hard to repay their sacrifices. I knew my parents needed a house. They'd been saving for years but spent that money on my education. I remember I had just started my career. I hadn't even been working a full year when I went home for a visit. While we were having dinner, my dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "We did our part by paying for your education. Now, it's your turn. You should start planning to buy a house for us soon. We can't rent forever, right?" My stomach dropped when he said that. I knew they expected me to buy them a house, but not so soon. I hadn't even been working a year. I was still sharing an apartment with 2 roommates because I couldn't afford one by myself, and my parents were already asking me to buy them a house. I was like, what the hell? I protested. "Dad, I just started my job. I can't even afford the rent on my own place. How do you expect me to take on such a big financial commitment?" He said he wasn't asking right away, but that he was planting the idea in my head so I could plan and work hard to make it happen. My mom chimed in with a deceptively sweet voice. "We paid for your university. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are now. Think of it like paying us back." I didn't have the heart to argue. They weren't wrong. I was where I was thanks to their sacrifices, but sometimes their lectures were too much to bear, and I wanted to scream, "Who asked you to do this for me?" But I didn't have the guts to confront my parents. I kept a respectful distance and only took their calls when it was urgent. Visiting them was out of the question after that dinner conversation. I used my job as an excuse to avoid them. However, the obligation to buy them a house stayed with me, lingering in my mind. So, after 5 years of saving and working hard, I gave in. I bought them a house, a modest, nice house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed fine. I thought it was the least I could do for my parents after everything they'd done for me. I paid the mortgage for 3 years, even paying a little extra to pay it off sooner. I had other plans in life. I want to buy my own house, travel, start a family, etc. I can't carry this loan indefinitely. After buying them the house, my parents stopped bothering me about helping them out. They proudly showed it off to their friends and family, boasting about how their investment had paid off. I didn't mind, but it didn't close the gap between us. I still kept my distance and didn't visit often. 2 days ago, I decided to visit my parents after being swamped with work for months. I didn't give them a heads up. I wanted to surprise them, but there was a surprise waiting for me. When I arrived at the house, I saw Perry's car parked outside. I thought she was just visiting, and the idea of a family gathering made me happy. Perry had gotten married and moved out while my parents were still renting. It had been years since I last saw her at her wedding. I knocked on the door, and Perry answered in her pajamas. I thought she was just stopping by for a little while. We hugged and exchanged greetings, and then she asked, "What are you doing here?" I replied playfully, "I could ask you the same." I went inside and asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" She casually sat on the couch and replied, "Oh, they moved." I froze. They moved? What do you mean they moved? This is their house. Perry shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. I guess they didn't tell you. They actually gave it to me. I live here now. I felt like the floor was shifting beneath me. They gave you the house I've been paying for. Yeah, she said indifferently. It made total sense. Mom and Dad said I needed it more. You know, I'm planning on having a baby soon, and they thought I should have the house. I was stunned. I asked, "Where are they living now?" She replied, "They're renting an apartment on the other side of town," as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I left without saying another word, my head spinning with anger. I drove straight to their new apartment without caring if I showed up unannounced. When my mom opened the door, I wasted no time and said, "What the hell is going on? Perry just told me you gave her the house I bought, the house I've been paying for. Can you explain that?" My mom had the nerve to smile like it wasn't a big deal. "Calm down, sweetie, come in. We didn't think you'd mind." I walked in but didn't bother sitting down. I wanted answers. Somehow my voice rose. "You didn't think I'd mind? You gave away the house I bought without even talking to me? How could you think it wouldn't matter to me?" My mom sighed, like I was the unreasonable one. "Well, we thought since you're doing so well, you wouldn't care. Perry's planning on having a baby. Do you want your nephews to be born in a rented house and grow up in an unstable environment? Now that they have the house, they don't have to worry about rent. They can focus on other things, like their child's well-being." I exploded. "I don't care where my nephews are born or raised. I don't mind them living in a rented house. We did. I still live in a rental, and it's not my problem to think about them. It's Perry and her husband's problem. If they want stability, they can get better jobs." Hearing the commotion, my dad came out of the room and said, "What's all this fuss about? She needs financial security. We had to give her the house. She didn't have the same opportunities as you. We didn't pay for her college, so she deserves this house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what parents do. Say whatever they want without being confronted. I responded, "You didn't pay for her college because she never went to college. She dropped out of high school, remember?" They refused to understand the gravity of what they'd done. They kept saying, "You're successful. You can buy another house." Of course, I won, but it'll be for me or for you. I didn't even know how to respond. I felt like the world was crashing down around me. I couldn't understand their logic. I just stormed out of their apartment, furious. I checked into a hotel and have been here ever since. I really don't know what to do. I can't keep paying the mortgage after learning the truth. But dealing with the situation is a real challenge. I know my parents can't afford the mortgage, and I'm sure my sister couldn't either. This drama happened on Friday, and today is Sunday. My flight back is on Tuesday. At first, I thought about booking a flight immediately and leaving, but when I calmed down, I realized I had other things to do here. I wanted to check how much was left on the loan since I've been paying extra, so I think I'm ahead on payments. Before my visit, I asked my dad about the mortgage balance. He said he needed to check with the bank manager. I texted him to take me to the bank tomorrow to get more details on the remaining balance. Even though I don't want to keep paying the mortgage, I want to know the current status. Update 1. There's more to this story, and I'm literally shaking as I write this. We just got back from the bank, and what I found out left me devastated. The extra money I was paying toward the mortgage never actually went to the bank. My dad was only paying the actual mortgage and using the extra money for his own expenses, specifically to pay the rent for his apartment. I've been living so frugally all these years, below my means, saving just a little more so I could pay off the mortgage sooner. When the manager showed me the monthly deposits, I told him there must be a mistake because we were paying nearly 1.33 times the mortgage amount. I even opened up my transaction history to show how much money I'd been sending my dad every month. Then my dad stepped in and said the manager's numbers were correct, that we were only paying what was due on the mortgage. At first, I thought my dad was confused, that he didn't understand the situation, but then he grabbed my arm and said, "The records are correct. Let's talk about this later." I felt another blow. I was dizzy, bracing myself for another betrayal. I sat there, stunned, as the meeting ended, with the manager giving us details on the remaining mortgage balance and other options for refinancing, etc. I stayed silent. As soon as the manager left us alone, my dad pulled me aside and asked, "Why are we even talking about the extra money? Did you send it for the mortgage?" I replied angrily, "Of course. Why else would I send extra money? I told you it was for the mortgage." What he said next left me speechless. "I thought you were sending it for our expenses. I used it to pay our rent." I stared at him, then sat down, burying my head in my hands. What do I do with my parents now? My dad sat next to me and asked me not to make a scene, saying it wasn't a big deal. I exploded. "Not a big deal? You made me buy you a house, then gave it to Perry without even telling me. On top of that, you used the extra mortgage money to pay your rent. Let me tell you, my dad's not the type of man to stay quiet and take being confronted by his son, especially in public." He snapped back, "Don't you dare raise your voice at me. You didn't do me a favor by buying us that house. I spent all my savings to pay for your college. I don't have to explain to you what I do with that house. You sent me the money, and I paid the mortgage on time. What's the problem if I use the extra to cover our rent? It's not like we were asking for more." I was furious with his words. "The extra was meant to pay off the mortgage early, not to fund your new apartment." I stormed out of the bank. As I walked down the street, I could hear my dad shouting my name, but I didn't look back. I kept walking toward the subway. My mom called me 4 or 5 times and also sent a text asking me to come back home so we could sit down and talk about it. I didn't respond. I don't want to talk about anything. I've made up my mind, and I'm going to do what I think is right. No more of their toxicity. Update 2. Sorry for the spelling and grammar mistakes in my last update. I was shaking with anger. I hadn't edited it to make it legible. I also didn't respond to some of the common questions I received in the comments, so let me address those first. Some asked if my parents are Asian. No, we're not. Let me bust that myth. Asians aren't the only community whose parents push their kids to extremes. I don't want to reveal my ethnic background, sorry. Some also asked, who was the loan holder? Well, the loan was in my dad's name. I didn't confirm it because I wanted to buy a new car and maybe a house in a few years, and being associated with that loan could have affected my future loans. Now, I'm glad I made that decision because it made executing my plan easier. Now, onto the update. The next day, I went back to my normal life. A month passed, and I didn't send my dad the mortgage money. As expected, he tried to contact me on the first day of the month, only to find out that I had blocked him. Not just him, blocked my mom, my sister, and her husband too. I don't want any more drama in my life. I made my decision and stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. If my parents wanted to give the house to Perry, fine, let her take care of the payments. Let her be responsible for it. When my parents realized what I had done, they lost it. I got some calls and voicemails from unknown numbers. Maybe they used their friends' numbers. I don't know. It was something like, "You can't just stop paying. We don't have the money to cover the mortgage." I laughed and sighed. Well, it's not my problem anymore. I blocked those numbers too. But that wasn't all. 3 days later, I found my dad standing at my door when I got home from work. He was furious and said, "You can't just leave like this. You owe us. We paid for your college. We made you who you are." I replied right away, "Already paid you back. Do you realize how much I've spent on that mortgage? It's more than what you paid for my college tuition. I don't owe you anything." He called me ungrateful, but I cut him off, saying, "No, You can't guilt trip me anymore. I've done more than enough. I'm not paying the house, the rent, or anything else. You made your choice. Now, deal with the consequences. They treated me like a commodity, investing in me by sending me to college, and now they want to squeeze this cash cow for life. I'm not a commodity. I walked out the hallway and drove off. I didn't go into my apartment because I knew he'd follow me in, and I wasn't ready to deal with more drama. When I came back later that night, he was gone. My mom tried calling me several more times from new numbers, leaving desperate voicemails. Even Perry left me a long message from another number, saying she needed the house for her future family and that I was being selfish for not helping. Selfish? Me? The one who's been paying for everything while she did nothing. I wasn't giving in to any of their manipulations. I'm done with them. I've cut all ties completely. Update 3. The house was sold at auction, and Perry was forced to move out. As I mentioned before, Perry couldn't afford to pay the mortgage, and my parents were already financially strapped, paying for their apartment rental. They couldn't manage the mortgage, rent, and household expenses. When I stopped making the payments, I knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. After almost a year, I found out that the house had been sold. My parents did everything they could to save it, using their savings and cashing out their retirement money, but they couldn't. Things also got tense between Perry and my parents during this time. While they were struggling to pay the mortgage, they asked Perry and her husband to contribute 50%, but she refused, saying the house was a gift to her, and they should handle the full mortgage payment. That's when my parents realized the mistake they made with me, but by then, it was too late. I think my parents did the right thing by letting the bank auction and sell the house, rather than continue paying the mortgage and let Perry stay in it without contributing. The house was auctioned off, and my dad got back a considerable amount of money, part of the down payment, and the monthly payments he had been making all these years. With that, he has more than enough to recover what he invested in me. I know it's my money, but I'm not expecting a single cent of it. They're not going to give it back to me, and I have to let it go. At least now, they can't say they did me a favor by paying for my college tuition. I've already repaid that favor with interest. Now, I don't feel guilty for cutting them out of my life. From what I've heard from my cousins and aunts, my parents moved to a smaller apartment to reduce their rent costs. They've also saved the money they got from the auction for their retirement. They've been telling everyone they don't want to depend on me in their old age, and that they're in a better place now. They've also cut all financial support to Perry, and told her she has to manage on her own with her family. Yeah, she tried to manipulate them again, saying they paid for my college tuition and secured my future, so they were also obligated to secure hers. However, now my parents have faced reality and aren't giving in to her demands. Well, I'm glad for them. Meanwhile, I've rented an apartment for myself, finally getting some privacy. And now, I don't feel guilty for turning off that tap. If I stay in the house on my own, I'll finally have some privacy. I've also started saving to buy my own house, a place that will be mine and only mine. It's not easy to walk away from family, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who take the most advantage of you. It took me a long time to realize that, but I don't regret my decision. Family or not, I deserve better than being treated like a walking bank account. Update 4. I've seen a lot of people still asking questions, so I'm going to clarify a few points before getting into what's happened recently. One of the most common questions has been how much my parents spent on my education and how much I've spent on the mortgage for the house that was supposedly for them. Well, although I don't have the exact figures, I can tell you that my education cost around $40,000. As for the mortgage, including the extra payments I was making to pay it off early, but which my parents used to pay for their apartment rent, I've paid about $52,000. As you can see, I've repaid the exact amount. I no longer feel that I owe them anything. Some people have also asked about Perry. I want to clarify that she hasn't been left homeless, as some suggested. She and her husband are living at her in-laws' house, so no, I'm not that evil brother who left his poor sister without a home. Also, the house was never for her. It was for my parents. Perry and her husband could have taken on the mortgage payments, but, as usual, they didn't want to make the effort. The house was in my parents' name, and I didn't like the house. It was in my parents' name, and they were the ones who decided to give it to Perry, so they were free to pay the rest. So there was nothing I could do, and even less that I wanted to do for them. Now, the real update. My dad came back. It seems he had enough money for a plane ticket to visit me. Well, I correct myself, to demand something from me, not to visit me. He came to ask me for more money. This time, he wants me to buy them another house. After everything that happened with the first house, the one they gave to their favorite daughter, now, they expect me to buy another one. He told me they deserve a house because they've made so many sacrifices for us, their children. He always goes back to the university topic, reminding me of the great sacrifice of paying for my education, which, of course, never fails to come up in any conversation with my parents. And of course, he mentioned that they gave a house to their daughter, as if that wasn't the height of irony, considering the house was originally for them, not for her. According to him, they've already played their part, so now, they deserve their own house. I made it clear to him that I'm in no way buying another house for them. The money I've been saving is to buy my own house, not to solve their problems again. I told them that their chance to have a house was wasted when they decided to give it to Perry, and they should go ask her to buy them a house now. I'd love to see what kind of response they'd get from her. My dad stayed in the city for a couple of days and asked me to think about it and we could talk again. I told him no, that I wasn't going to help them with that. The next time I post here, I hope to be able to share the news that I finally bought a modest place I can call my home. Update 5. Here I am, to tell you that I've been able to buy my own house. There's still work to be done, like buying furniture and things like that. But I finally have a roof over my head that I can call mine. I've read all your comments and advice, and as many of you recommended, I haven't told anyone, not even posted it on social media. I've consulted a small group of friends who have no connections to my parents or family. They're friends I've made here in the city, so there's no way the news will get to my parents. I don't want to risk them doing what I've read in other posts, like asking me for the house to give it to my pregnant sister or something like that. So, I'm being extremely careful with this information. I don't want to end up in a mimosa situation where they ask for the house for the good of the family. I joke saying I'd even like to have an electric fence around the house to keep entitled parents at bay. But seriously, I've learned from Reddit that the best thing is to keep this info a secret, at least until I can set some solid boundaries. Now, instead of asking for advice on how to deal with parents like that, I'm here to ask for advice on something more enjoyable: decorating my new home. If there's anything I'm not good at, it's decorating. When I lived with roommates, there was always someone else who took care of that. And when I moved into a rented place, it was already furnished, so I never had to worry much about it. But now that I have this empty space, a blank canvas, I feel a little intimidated. I don't want to mess it up and turn it into a place without personality or bad taste.